7:01. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. And first up on our agenda is approval of last month's minutes. I read over them. I did not see any needed corrections, but did anyone else? Okay. Well, then I move that the minutes from September 18th be accepted. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor? You three. And then just, oh, perfect.
Can you hear us, Rihanna?
Yes, I can.
Good.
Great.
Okay. Just started. So.
Yes, we've approved the minutes so far. Okay, so the first item of new business, and I'm going to leave this as a question for the group. We did not have a staff member presentation for this month. So I thought it might be a nice time to do a library tour. However, I also know that we do have one of our members on Zoom. So would you all prefer to postpone that until we are all in person? I don't know if that's gonna happen anytime soon. Ariana, would you be okay with just missing that portion of the meeting and joining us back when we are back in this room?
Yeah, I'm okay with that, so I can join back.
Okay, great. Then let's go ahead and proceed with that. If that works for you, John.
That's great. Yeah, well, I'll just leave it, Rihanna, and mute, and then you'll know when we're back, if that's okay.
That
Just
sounds good.
Just so I don't have a disconnect.
Okay, great.
Yay. Are we leaving things in this room?
Yeah, we can close it and lock it,
Okay.
so we're fine. So Rihanna, I don't know if you're around, but we just got back.
I can hear you.
Good, okay. Sorry that I was ambitious thinking that would take 10 minutes.
So thanks so much, John, for showing us around.
Yeah.
I think what really stuck out to me was how smart the use of space is and how much more space you need. Thinking about the library, things, how's it just, every part of that, it's just, you need more. Any other questions or impressions that board members want to share?
I second what you say. More. Yes. Some of the things, like the library of things, like the discovery kits, like that requires more space.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to say that it's not lost on me when you do a full tour, even without all of the narrative, you see how much more there is to this place besides books, and how much is people coming together and connected with maybe I'm into this thing, I can do this thing, I'm going hiking.
yeah.
Maybe it's sewing machine.
I think the other thing that sticks out too is we're 20 minutes till close and it's in use. I mean, it's not crowded, but it's definitely every quarter there are people. So, right. So let's go ahead and move on. We have a monthly icebreaker. Katie, I believe it was you.
Yes. So, it's such a common thing in our culture when somebody asks you what you do, that you respond what you do for a living. And if that wasn't the cultural norm, and you could answer any way you want, how would you respond to the question, oh, what do you do? And I think for myself, I would probably first describe myself as a gardener and an urban homesteader. So, everybody else?
That's a great question.
Is that all you're going to say about yourself?
and I dabble in mountain biking. I mean,
You're a gardener and an urban homesteader.
yeah, I'm a chicken tender.
So yeah, I'm going to infer that you have some animals.
Yeah, just chickens. Chicken tender.
Just chickens. Okay. Cool. That's a great question.
I think I would say I am someone who enjoys puttering in the kitchen,
Ooh, I like that.
as well as in the garden. Mariana, I hope you can still hear us.
Yeah, I guess I'd probably be curious about becoming a pilot if I could choose something new, so.
Mhm. Nice.
Jamie or John or swap your two choices.
I kind of had to answer this question before in different contexts.
That's true. It
Because
kind
I
of depends
have
on
to-
where you're at, how you would answer.
Right, and I've had to connect seemingly disparate dots for people, but I would say that I'm a creator, a creative, a communicator, and a connector. And
There you
any
go.
space that I've ever spent time in, whether it was work or personal, like those, that's how I show up everywhere. But I love to make things, anything. Not so good in the kitchen.
Not good necessarily.
Not good necessarily.
Enjoy
it.
She never said that. She just,
For a
what did you
fashion.
say? You
Putter.
Putter.
I love to
I
putter.
love that. Well, for me, it's bread baker.
Oh.
Yeah. In a somewhat former life, I was a bread baker. In a bread shop, I
Not
was
right
trained by a French master baker.
Oh. Okay.
And so, and that's, I probably shouldn't say this on camera and stuff, but it's probably my true like heart, that's my passion. I mean, it's,
Is it only bread?
it's just very
Other baked
different.
things?
I only bake bread,
Okay.
I could probably figure out other stuff, but that's what I do.
What's your favorite kind of bread to make?
There's two, I make baguettes. I mean, I can make more, but my baguettes and I have a chocolate cherry bread recipe.
Okay.
So someday I'll
Okay.
do it.
Okay.
It's a process, but that was a long time ago period of my life, but it's just always been a part of me, and it's fulfilling in a very different way than this
Right.
career
For
is.
sure.
It's instant gratification. Well, within 24 hours, but like, it's
Done.
process beginning to end. So in our case, you're making bread from mixing it to letting it rise and proof. Next day, bake it, and then see your end product. And it's just and it's a mix of creative but
Yeah.
science,
Yeah.
which works for me because I'm not strong in either.
Yeah.
I would say about myself.
Have you ever hosted a program that was history of bread making plus tips?
Plus tips.
Kitchen have it out there?
Oh, you do the
Huh?
kitchen.
Kitchen have it out?
No, this would have to be done somewhere else.
Do you currently have sourdough start in your house?
I have
No.
gluten-free sourdough starter in my house, but it's
Yeah.
gluten-free.
Are you gluten free? Yeah, I don't. I've done that before, and then a few moves, it just gets a little hard. But honestly, my go-to is baguettes, which is not a sourdough. You can do them as a sourdough, I should say, but I don't. The traditional French way is not. It's yeast risen bread. And then I just use a similar recipe for the chocolate bread. That should be a sourdough if I made it in the form that I was trained in. But I've not really noticed a taste difference, especially when you introduce cocoa and chocolate chunks and cherries.
Everyone's
That was way too long.
Do you have anything you want to? I would say, and I'm not a professional by any means, but I would say I'm a poet. I write poetry. I look at things very poetically. I really love seasons for that reason.
Yeah.
And I'm also a lover of puns, so that doesn't help my poetry. But
That's true. There's not enough poetry with puns in it.
my husband is probably tired of them. But just that's my way of looking at life. It is poetic, and I love that, like language. Not really necessarily the best analyst of poetry, but I love writing it. I love kind of just immersing myself in colors and sensations and stuff like that. So that's just how my brain processes things.
You have some favorite poets? Who do you reach for when you need that?
That's hard because I really go
Infusion.
more of the feeling of something rather than the author. I sometimes even just skim over the author itself and then just go right into the poem. But I would say probably Robert Frost is probably one of my favorites, just classic poetry, and kind of an inspiration, but my poetry is more, I don't know, I feel like a lot of poetry is very political and very kind of like how the author views their own environment and things like that. And I feel more my poetry is more seasonal and more kind of environment, but like atmospheric, if that makes sense. So I think it's a little bit different, and I don't really have a lot of good basis, I guess, for actual poets themselves. It's more of I love words, really, realistically. So that's just kind of, that's how I write, is based on how you can describe something with words to make it colorful. So it's nice.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Do we have a volunteer for next month?
Has anyone not had a turn at this point?
I'm gonna keep track, but I do not, I believe we all have, so I can go ahead and take next month's. Let me do that.
I love that question, thank you.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's more who you are, not what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was very successful in what he did for a living, but if you asked him that, he would say he was a wilderness bow hunter. And yet he held security clearances of like one of 50 people in the
Yeah.
country held, and that's not how he would answer that question.
Great
Worked
reminder.
80, 90-hour weeks, and that's still not how he would answer that question.
Right, so moving on, our next agenda item is the orientation video. And I want to share that I did not watch it, I meant to, for this meeting. But I wanted to bring it up for two reasons, just to make sure that any new board member knows that was sent out if you did not catch that email. And then to see if there were any questions that we could take back to the city. So if anyone,
It came from you, right? Or did it come from Tracy?
I believe it was in a forward from you, but let me
Yeah,
pull that up.
well, it started from last month's meeting, and
Yes.
council member
Maybe it was a word from
I think
Susie.
Susie, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
she, and then I did refer that because it had a link to, I think, basically the video that used to be done as an orientation,
Yeah.
in like an in-person one, which some of, and, well, Cynthia may have, but no one else.
Yeah, I think maybe Catherine was
Yeah.
pretty close. Yeah. Okay, so that came out on an email September 19th from John.
Yeah.
That was a forward then from John on the 20th. Any questions on that video for anyone who has had a chance to watch it? Okay, I probably won't put it as an agenda item next month, but just please feel free to email me individually if you do have a question, and I'll make sure that gets passed on.
Okay.
Okay, next up, let's talk about Spring 24 meeting dates. There are a couple holidays, so I'd love to get that sooner rather than later. We've decided to keep third Monday through the fall and winter holidays. However, the third Monday in January is MLK. So I was gonna see if people were able to switch to the 22nd. Like January, there are actually 5 Mondays this year. Any problems with the 22nd? Okay, go ahead and play that, and hopefully both city council liaison and Catherine will be able to make those. If not, we can take the notes. Okay, and then we have a conflict. February is President's Day. Is that a city holiday?
It is the
Okay.
19th, yeah.
So we'll need to move that one as well.
Yeah.
I am available the weekend the week before or after. Checking that.
Well, we could keep it consistent and go with the 26th.
Which would keep it about 4 weeks, otherwise you're gonna push within almost 2 weeks of each other.
That's a good point. Let's do the 26th. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. March, I believe the 18th. I'm not quite sure of the St. Marie spring break this year. Is
Oh,
that
let me-
that?
18th through 22nd.
Is that gonna be a problem for this board? I will be fine with that date. Well, and also because CU's is the next week.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's too
Yeah,
soon to
they're all-
tell.
All over the place. I don't know anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's keep that for now, and we can revisit if we need. And we'll just go ahead and finish out. We won't go all the way, but we can at least finish out through the spring. I don't see any conflicts with April the 15th in terms of holidays.
It is tax day.
That's true.
Some people might be really busy.
We're very stressed. This morning.
I mean,
But I think we can still keep the board meeting. And we'll just
So-
plan to do our
I know, well,
taxes early.
someday it'll become a federal holiday. Which
Yeah.
would be a different discussion. Anyway.
May 20th, are there any holidays or, I don't see any reason on that one, but. Hey, let's just stop with May for now, but at least we have the spring schedule.
Oh, the 20th is not a holiday, I might not be able to make that one.
Okay,
But
thanks.
it's pretty far out too, so if we want to decide later, that's fine too.
Okay, we can revisit later spring, and early part of 24. Cool. Okay, great, let's go ahead and move on to old business. So action plan update from John.
Okay. Let me share this since. Okay, so action plan. So some things from the last month. So leadership development. I have had a lot of back and forth with HR and the city. We have a relationship with Mines and Associates for a number of things in the city, you know, including like employee, what's it called? Assistance program, EAP. But they also do trainings, they do a lot of stuff. So because of that, I'm in the process of scheduling some leadership classes for myself and my department heads, something I've wanted to do. So that's basically a process, but a little more update from the last time. It's kind of just been sitting there waiting for something to happen, really. Under, let's see, safety, after last month's meeting, facilities brought in a contractor they work with for doors to get a quote on the doors, our double doors that go into the staff area that you all often use. And where our board meeting room is when we use that. Anyway, I'm just waiting on the quote back from that. The electrical part for pieces needed for both the doors and the staff elevator to basically make them badge accessed. We know about that. It's just now it's down to the doors and the mechanism. The double doors are the real issue because they can't operate with this type of thing in the current state because there's not a metal bar in the middle and it has to have something to lock into. So it's either gonna require that or new doors or something. So that's where that is. We're getting there still. Under external communication, and I'm sorry about expanding these, but we did do, which has been a process that we've been working on for a while. So, it's because this is the way. How do I get this out? Thank you. Okay. So we have done a pretty big overhaul, at least of the homepage of our website.
Notice on the phone, it's really noticeable.
Yeah, and so this is a lot better and something we were striving towards. And I'm not going to show you the old one, but you probably remember it, or
Yeah.
hopefully you don't remember it because it was a little hard to navigate. So we have some similar concepts, right? The rotating kind of, this is randomly generated, and then just some clean topics of what you can do and the high access things, searching the catalog here, how you contact us, how you get to your account, and what that means.
It's nice right up at front.
And it's right up at front, and then you break down about and programs and services. And there's a lot more to do here. However, as we speak, the city is at a city level is working on a complete website redevelopment, which is, it may involve the current vendor that the city uses now for our hosting, or I think they put out an RFP even. So
I love that you did that.
it could be, thank you. That she's referring to
Putting the feasibility as one
Feasibility
of
study.
those rotating things.
yeah, it's a rotating thing, and actually if you go to about, it's here.
That's great.
It's also replicated on the board that's in the middle of the lobby when we were in there. There's two sides. One is the ballot specific information, and the other is basically this, which is a summary. These are some summaries from that study to help
Right.
really the public understand really what was informing this council referring this to the ballot in the first place.
I've referred to this at least 5 times in just individual conversations with people this week.
So this was happening anyway, and then with the redesign, it kind of helps a lot. The other thing we did, which was something that this board had talked about at one point, was making sure our policies were here. So now the policies have its own place on the website. Everything we have that's current or up to date is here. We have a new computer use policy that legal just approved, so that should be here sometime soon. For people using our public computers and or laptops that they check out, and what that means. So we pulled that out and kept them in their own area so that hopefully that's a little bit easier.
That's much clearer, the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing it's a lot better. When you get out of this home page, and you get into some of the internal pages, that's not a good example, actually. Here we go. You kind of get into the old menu a little bit, and then this is where it starts to get, a little bit, and this is the kind of thing a redesign will help hopefully resolve, where we clean this up and not, these sub-menus and sub-menus upon sub-menus and fly-out menus and stuff that just, it had its day and time. I don't know that that's really how, one button to get you where you need to go.
And it looks to be, I can see the site, but can't hear the mute on. It looks like we are on mute. If you,
What? How did that
but it was-
Sorry.
No worries.
So, okay. Anyway, we're working on the website. You figured that out by watching?
It looks to be, just looking, I can see where font size, it looks like accessibility, or inaccessibility was
It's a
a
huge
factor.
part of it, so
with
we
this
can
as well.
resolve that here, but there's major accessibility issues on the city website in general.
Okay.
That's informing a lot of a whole redesign and getting out of the current platform we are in, or an updated platform of what we're in, which is, they have this vendor I've worked with actually in a previous job, and they have updated platforms that are responsive, they're much better in mobile, and things that you just assume are gonna work these days. This is hit or miss, honestly. The front pages will be fine, but when you get into interior pages, it's not real intuitive, and some of them really don't render that well. So that's some website things that have happened in the last month, which is great. It's weird, I wonder if I hit me by accident. Anyway, getting back to the action plan. one of the other items, I think this is under, I want to say internal. No. EDI. So equity, diversity, and inclusion. So the members from the city's equity team and the city manager met with myself and my department heads to have an initial conversation about leadership development specific for the library. Of course, the city does this great at a city level. I've wanted some training here so we can work together as a team. So that was more or less like, this is what we're going to do, getting the leadership buy-in, which everyone's on board with. That's kind of step one of that. And what will happen later is, and hopefully it's soon, the equity team will reach out to individual departments within the library, right? So they will, I think, start with circulation or the adult services department and have individual meetings and go over some training topics within EDI, which I think will be really beneficial with a focus on, because we're such a customer-facing department, what does that mean for library, right? And EDI, internal matters, but external matters a lot, in comparison to other departments that are much more interior-facing, right? Who have office jobs and they only have to worry about their coworkers. So much different here. So I wanted some tailored-ish type of training. So that's coming up. The shelving in children's, I talked about when we were out there. So you kind of got that update, although Rihanna didn't hear it, but basically the consultant has given us some plans. My head of children's and I worked through those together and with her and finalized at least a conceptual plan. It could always change. The next step will be meeting with them again when they get some vendors and we can get quotes and look at products of actually the physical shelving and what we're doing. So that's kind of the next thing. But we have a layout. And then within we're at collection development. A part of the shelving really, but the children and teen department has been doing some significant weeding. Some of it's just needed to happen, honestly, but also to help with the shelving project. So the less collections that we don't need that are there is better for, we can either buy less shelving, but the more important thing is to make better use of the space. And then the last thing is outreach and the partnerships. It's been on here that this started before me of working with the school district on having student IDs function as a library card. And, I've known this was there and in process. It's always been in process since I started here nearly a year ago, and I've never really followed up on it. I did this project before at a former library. So a rep from the school district had reached out to one of my staff and basically saying, like, I think this isn't going to work, it's too complicated. There was various reasons. And so I started asking questions, like, why is it too complicated? So I've learned in this that way too much information was being asked for. Like, we were trying to make the student ID equivalent to a physical library card. And I don't believe that that's what the goal should be. All students have devices. They're given devices. This is what I understand. They either have an iPad or whatever they're given as a student. The point here with their ID is to have access to databases and digital materials that will help with their schoolwork. That's not to say they wouldn't want a library card, but if we're only looking at online collections, we don't need to know information about the student.
Okay.
All we need is their number, and that's it. And then we can take care of the rest. If they want a library card, sure, come in. You can show us your student ID card, we'll look you up, and then we'll go through our normal process of issuing you a card for physical. But in the meantime, as a student, because the school district is very limited on databases and electronic resources from what they have told me, that they see the benefit of this, of access to the collections we have in that sense that would really expand what they don't have now naturally. So if they can just access that with the student ID, We don't really need all this other stuff of capturing their name and address. That's a whole different thing. We get into privacy things with schools. They had to get parental permission slips. In this case, now I'm not gonna speak for the school, but at least in the last job I did, we're not capturing any personally identifying information in our system. What we do is we get the student ID and then put it in as like student 1, student 2. We don't really care who they are at this point. They can't damage or lose library materials,
Right.
but they have access. From the school side, at least what I think that can mean is it's more of an opt-out for parents rather than they need signatures. So we're doing this so your student, and by the way, the school's deciding it may just be for middle and high schoolers, which is maybe the more likely population to use it.
Yeah.
I'm not deciding that for them, but
Which
that's,
side will manage, say, when they exit the school district, either through graduation or?
that's something to figure out. And I can tell you in the last job we did, basically, as we would capture the student ID, every year, all student IDs would expire at the end of the school year. And then at the next school year, we do a new import.
Yeah.
So even if you have the same students, it's fine. Our system can capture duplicates. So then it'll just be like, oh yeah, you exist, fine. New expiration date. It's just programmatically done.
Well, so I'm sure this has been explained to us before as a board, but how does that work with the school district and city boundaries not aligning with the city, with the school district having
Yeah, because we
multiple
cross
libraries?
that
Yeah.
llama, right? But
Yeah.
SVBB
Crosses into
crosses,
High Plains.
yeah, and into Weld County, right?
Yeah.
So there's some questions to ask at least of some of our vendors that we pay
Yeah.
for. Because database vendors, and you know this from university, but they can have some specific restrictions, right? Like they want Longmont residents because that's what we technically are paying for. Really what it comes down to is, can the school district link students directly to these databases, or do they need to come to the library website and then access? Because if they come to the library website, then they put in their student ID, i.e. library card, and then they're fine. So it's sort of, I don't want to couch it like as a workaround, but it's the way to do it right.
Yeah.
So, but if the vendor allows us direct linking, and I'm sure the school, and they've already told me this, the district would prefer, and I understand that,
Yeah.
from their own website, because they have links for students to go, student resources, and then they can say like EBSCO, whatever they're gonna call it. And then boom, they go, they put in their ID and they're done. And it might be an extra link where they have to come to the Longmont Public Library website first and then access the resource. If they're out of, I'm not really answering your question, out of,
But
so,
you are,
well, so in my, yeah, I think it's a gray area.
Yeah.
So if you get into service, who's your service area? Largely, the school district is in Longmont.
Yeah.
So I feel justified in that sense that we are the primary servicer of that school district. And therefore, we can provide access to these resources even if said school is not in Longmont.
that doesn't mean that, and that also doesn't mean the students don't
Yeah.
live
Correct.
even at the
And
school.
the reality is anyone can go to our website, sign up for a library card from anywhere they live and access one of our resources. They have a limited time to do it, right? It's a 3-month or whatever it is expiration date. But anyone can access one of our resources from anywhere as long as it has a limited expiration. So there's ways to figure it out so that we're not breaking that service area in what the vendor, those providers would want to make sure that we're not, getting too far outside of our boundaries.
Makes sense.
But can somebody just, even if they live out of town, come to Longmont Library and get a library card in person as
Yep.
well?
Yep, and in Colorado, yes. So if you come in and get a library card because of the Colorado library card, whatever, the Colorado library card, yeah. Once you have a card, you can access it. It doesn't matter what your address is. So I feel like there's just a lot of variables in that, so I'm not as concerned about that.
Well, thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's the action plan update from the month. Actually, a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and we're just gonna move right into any questions about the action plan update? Yeah, let's just move right into the library director update.
And so my update here will be highlights from the month of September for programming. I'll just leave it for this one. Just do that. Assuming we can still see. So Children and Teen introduced some new programs this fall. You can see those listed here. Some of them new and some of them just updates on those programs, or some of them reintroduced now that it's in the fall and school has started, I should say. I'll point out that in October, which is now, so I'll say this again probably in October, we're introducing a yoga story time and a craft story time. And then Dungeons and Dragons, I've talked about this before just because it's so popular, but our children and teen department wanted to point that out again. It's a fully Friends funded thing as everything is. And then our tween clubs, we did a few different programs in September for that. A lot of fun there. You can see some images there. Take home craft kits we did. Hispanic Heritage Month was a highlight there. And these were on the table just in the children's there. Maybe you participated. And then we did a Lotiera and Pinata making program, also for Hispanic Heritage Month. Did a few things around that, including at one of our outreach, which I think is talked about later. And then just some numbers from children and teen programming, totals we did. So out of all the programs, we delivered 44 with 1,400 attendees. That's a lot.
That's great.
And then going down to adults, the keychain program again, same celebration for Hispanic Heritage, and then a few other things here. Oh, the History of Botanic Art was a really cool program from what I've heard. I didn't get to attend it myself. I don't know if anyone did. That was pretty good. And then the regular programs we do, the chess night's huge. That's had. This is an example of one of the programs that's had to move down here to our meeting room because it's gotten so big.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great, but then we book out the meeting room instead of letting the public use it because it's so big. So it's just another indicator of space, as you mentioned before, Cynthia. And then all the numbers from everything we did in adult this month. They listed out, the number of programs we could add up, and then you can see the attendance here with the botanic art being pretty high. And then outreach, which will take up the rest of this, outreach will gradually slow down a little as we get into winter, but this is summer and fall is hugely busy. So Lillian went to Atria, is it Atria or Atria? Atria, okay. One of the things I've talked to her about is more outreach into older adult populations and North Longmont, which will be mentioned here too. I just think, and she knows that, but just trying to expand who and where we're hitting there. So that's mentioned here as far as her going North Longmont. Some of what she does, you see she's in front of one of the Mexican grocery stores. She does that in a few places in town. She just puts herself up front, and anyone that comes shopping, she talks to about the library. And she's probably brought more people into this library just from this type of outreach alone, which is, I would say, an unconventional thought of where you do outreach. She has a great partnership with Pi, and they've worked together, and what's in the middle here, when our involvement with Pi started, it was almost more like the library was babysitting kids while the parents met. And she's developed this into full programming, and now the whole thing is a program. Like the parents here, the kids here, and they have an agenda. And it's just, it's really has developed into something that I think is really good for everybody. So there's just some more photos there from that involvement. And then of course, Rhythm was in September. I don't know if any of you were there. I was COVID stricken, so I was not there. I was supposed to be, but anyway, hopefully it was fun. We had a great time from what I hear, a lot of busyness at the tent that we had. Had a lot of activity. I think I've said this before, Lillian always describes connections as stats. So this is number of interactions with the public. So that's a lot.
great.
That's a lot of interaction. And that's among everybody that was there. Okay, so photos there. Both September, October are usually busy with school types of events, back to school and things like that. I think some of that was last month. That continues here with some of the outreach she's done. The children's staff does outreach too at schools. Theirs are more specific classroom visits where they go and meet in the classroom and talk on certain topics. Hers are more, Lillian does more outreach as far as she goes to school events, right? Not necessarily in a classroom. Not that it matters, but there's two things going on with schools there that we're very conscientious about. Our visits to the senior center are popular, very popular, as you can see. I mean, that's a lot to get almost 70 people interacting with Lillian and the staff that go with her, which are staff, by the way, volunteering because Lillian has no staff. And then she's developed a relationship with the Latino Chamber of Commerce. So I think that's really good. The YMCA Fiesta, again, Hispanic Heritage Month activity. And then she lists out some of her stats, which I kind of touched on here. But as usual with her, pretty busy, right? Almost 1,600 connections with people on some level that we count. Community events being the largest. I mean, Rhythm is certainly a major contributor to that. That's not going to obviously be every month. And then you get to some of the normal things that she does, school visits and parks, right? Lanyon and Collier Park she goes to regularly. That'll taper off a little bit in the winter. Although she's found a place through the Spanish radio station, a connection that has space so that in the winter, if it's too cold or too snowy or whatever to be outside, we can change the program and use somebody's indoor space.
Oh, wow.
So that we don't actually have to cancel those park programs in the winter. But that's a process. So that's it. That's highlights. I know I breezed through it, but it's in your packet. And I can answer questions, but that's my also director report.
Thanks, John.
This makes me think back, where are we in the city budgeting year process?
For 2024,
Yeah.
so the budget process was concluded. It was presented to City Council last month.
Right.
The library is sort of in a unique spot in this case. So much of the budget requests that were put in were not sent forward to council because they are in the election package.
Right.
What happens depending on the result, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't really like to talk about one result, but
Yeah.
that'll mean a new discussion with the city manager and everybody about what does that mean for my
Wow.
budget requests and what are we going to be able to do now that this didn't happen, if that were to happen.
Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to ask, because I'm just reminded of
Yeah.
the importance of more outreach staff.
And that was a big request I
Yeah.
have, and you might not have been here yet, but the board, I presented that to the board and asked for substantial staffing increases for outreach. So Lillian's a team of one. I asked for a full-time librarian to support her, and basically the equivalent of probably, if I think of it as FTE, it would be, I think, 2 or 3 FTE support staff as well.
Mhm.
That's probably going to mean a few part-time staff, but at least she would have a department, as well as my request to get her own outreach van.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Oh.
there's big stuff in there. Now, the van technically shouldn't be election contingent because I'm paying that out of
Sorry,
a fund.
the fund, the
The,
incentive, for sure.
the Mosher Fund.
Yeah.
So, but that's gonna take time. I've learned from other departments who've requested vehicles that the
Yeah.
delivery is, it's not like going to buy a car where it's on the lot.
So basically, it's unknown at this point.
It's a no.
You'll be able to hire
Yeah.
that in 2024. Okay. Well, hopefully, because I am just continually impressed and worried about her burning out.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, she does a lot. I mean,
Amazing.
she does a lot.
Um,
It's, and I should say that the staff that do support her do a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone that goes and supports her at these big events, or small, even like at the senior center, and she still needs one or two people, they're coming from within the library, and what that supervisor is doing is making sure they have time in their schedule, and they arrange schedulings
Yeah.
to make it happen. So it's a lot of this to make sure that she has the support she needs to go out there.
Are there volunteer opportunities to
The-
support William with outreach?
We've had some volunteers go, yeah, but not a lot. And part of it is the level of knowledge for some of these that's needed. I mean, we're issuing library cards, and I wouldn't say 100%. So at Rhythm, we had volunteers. We had staff, but we had, I think, one or two volunteers that also helped at that event. It's more reasonable at the bigger events, but when you're at smaller things like the senior center, you need skilled library
Yeah,
staff
it's
to help.
Tricky to
Yeah.
not have expert
So it's a little bit of
staff
both.
do outreach.
Other questions regarding the director report?
And could you describe the tutor.com program?
Yeah, tutor.com.
I missed that.
Was that? Oh, she saw it somewhere.
It was slide 8.
Yeah.
There was like total new and I think live session, and was just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I can talk to it instead of trying to dig it back up. But so tutor.com is it's an online resource that offers live tutoring. And it's we pay for that actually through a state grant that we get generally every year. The Colorado State Library through federal funds for many years. Like this goes back to 10 years ago when I was still in Colorado working in Inglewood, that they've had this grant. And as long as you basically fill out a form, you get the money. So it's not like it's a grant process that you might think. And so we've been able to pay through it there. And so it offers that live one-on-one tutoring, really for all ages, is what that is. And it'd be great to see more usage than we get out of it, but that's kind of true with anything. But it's we try to market it a lot because it's not just an expensive resource, but we find a lot of value to it for people. Does that answer that, Rhiannon?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Other questions or comments? I will say on a personal note, I used to work part-time for the Museo de las Americas, so it was glad to see that they came and did one of the workshops.
Yeah.
Let's move on, really to our second to last agenda item, Friends of the Library report.
Trying to remember so long ago that the friends met. The last book sale brought in almost 10,000, which was fabulous. I think we might have broke 10,000 the previous sale. So I know, the goal is always to keep going, but I think that was a tremendous success. It's always interesting to know like the differences, how each sale goes and what people are looking for, and of course the inventory is always really different. So now that book sale is over, the board really wanted to refocus its energies around the election and what it could do. And so, as is their right as a 501c3, they are actively campaigning, within their means and with what they can do, but they've They've reached out to their active member email list. There's been messaging through the email platform. There's been some social media posts, and those are designed to kind of ramp up more as we get into that 2-week window. They produced these signs that they have been handing out, I think, mostly to volunteers and friends, members. But I do believe there are some left over, and we will be discussing a reorder, because we had, the friends had other ideas for collateral that could be produced just to help educate more of the community. And yeah, I don't know if all of those things are gonna get ticked off, but it's really, just trying to get the word out with the resources that they have. They have that beautiful display case is kind of like, that was an idea that was germinating for a long time, and so to finally see it in person and lit up and stocked with beautiful books is exciting, and I hope that draws more attention to some of those higher value items that the friends have donated to them. So, that could be potentially another significant stream of revenue for them. And then, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. There's not always a whole ton I think of to report on, but
No, that's great to know what they're able to do and what they are doing surrounding the ballot issue, as well as updates on the book display and book sale and display case. Any questions for Jamie? Cool. Well, we do not have our city council liaison here tonight, so we'll go ahead and skip to any updates from the world of librarianship. More generally, one I had, and I should have put this up for our hands. Y'all might have realized that, or read about, and I only know this from reading the news as well. There was a librarian from High Plains who won a settlement. Let me pull up that. She won a $250,000 settlement over a dispute involving their firing. And originally lost a job at the Erie Library after promoting an LGBTQ history workshop. So that was kind of Colorado. That was kind of Colorado news from the library world. But that is really the only thing I have from that side. I'm wondering if anyone else has anything
I
related to
saw
the
one.
library world.
The Windsor Library was offered a 1 point something million for their library because the developer wants that space.
Really?
Whoa.
I did not see, it was just the offer was put out, so I don't know where they are in the process of thinking of what to do.
Interesting. That's the Clearwater. Is it Clearwater?
is that
There
the place
Clearview
where they want to
Library
build the
District.
King Supers?
Yes, that's what it is. King Supers, thank you. King Supers
They
is who
said
made the
no
offer.
before.
Oh.
They've said, the library has said no before,
That's interesting.
but I don't know why, like, it just keeps coming back around. I guess it's allowed to do that.
Or they keep offering more, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, like they had some land that they, like in the past, they were saving for a potential expansion or something else having to do with the library. But something happened and it didn't get built initially, but they're like, well, someday we might get there, and they don't want to let go of that land. But there's also a movement, I don't know how big, but they're vocal of like needing more food, more accessible supermarkets in that part of town.
Interesting.
I just saw something on that.
Yeah, it was like
News, I
last
couldn't
week, it
remember
was
the
last week
town.
that they got, that there was an offer made again.
Weird.
Anything you have, John?
I mean, you know, things to keep an eye on. I mean, you know, there's still a lot of censorship news out there. It's not so much here, but it's worth keeping up on and kind of seeing what's going on and around mostly this country, I should say, the world. But you know, with people still advocating for book banning, so there's that, and there's a lot of discussion too on generative AI, right, and library use and implications of that,
Right.
which I kind of follow. It's just kind of worth looking up. I don't know that I have anything to report on it, but the Urban Library Council, which is a really good like leadership organization for public libraries, they just published something recently on AI and kind of from a leadership standpoint, like, you know, what are the benefits, what are the concerns, you know, you do get into, you know, a lot of it is this information valid kind of things, and also what's being made up or not being made up as far as information people are getting. It's kind of fascinating to just kind of read about it.
It gave me some hope to see how much positive coverage was in the media around Banned Book Week. That it didn't
Yeah.
feel like a little niche thing that only, the book nerds were into. It was like, on a much bigger stage with more and everything. So how did it go here? Because I came the day of there was a program, and
I wish I was thinking.
very bustling,
Yeah.
a lot of energy.
Yeah, we did do a program, and it's a program that's been done in years past, from what I understand. It's kind of almost like a entertainment type of program, not, you know, where not just talking about banned books, but like either reading from them or whose performance is related. I couldn't come, but I'm sure I'll talk about it more in October since it happened in October.
Right, okay.
But I will say we had a very successful banned books display. A lot of people talking about it, mostly, actually I don't think I heard any negative comments. It was all just really appreciating what we were putting up there, that people could interact with and learn about. When the chamber did their Unity out here, and I was out there that night with the library, we had like a little mini contest with a picture of a book, and the question was basically like, do you think this is banned or not? And it was a very like basic title, like Life in Alaska. I don't remember what it was. It's a real banned book. So it was fun to just interact with some people about that and talk about it.
That's good.
And then there was a little bit of chatter on the library's Facebook posts about like censorship in general, and a couple of the comments like starting to lean towards that side of like, you know, we should be able to decide what's in our library kind of comments. You know what I'm getting at, right? Like it's anyway. So just like parents in schools deciding,
Out of my head.
huh?
Get out of my head, like that's the exact thing I was thinking.
Yeah.
The parental rights.
Parental rights, yeah. And so
Excuse.
there's been a little chatter there, and my marketing person actually put one of them to my attention, just wondering if there should be any response or what. And generally my experience was, and it was actually two people getting into it with each other. So I'm like, yeah, we can probably stay out of that one, you know, because if anything, I said to them, just point them to our collection development policy. If we need to respond, just like, well, this is where we stand.
Yeah.
And which basically says how and why we collect and whose responsibility it is to decide who checks out what, right? So we're not a school, we're not responsible for your kids. Anyway, I just opted to not get into that, and I don't know if that conversation just carried on. Yeah, social media is, it's like people get worked up and then they go on to the next thing that bothers them. So, anyway, there's stuff there, but I don't think anything that's too alarming for this library.
Makes me so glad that the policies are so easy to find and
centered.
Yeah,
on
it
website.
makes it nice to be able to point to those.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Library news. This is very interesting, and I can send it or you can look it up. I'll write it down. So in Gunnison County, or Gunnison Library District, a recent case that went through the appeals court just got decided on, and what happened? And this is related to a citizen wanting to ban a book, right? They did a request for reconsideration. They challenged something in the collection. Normal process, right? We all have it. It went through, the director decided whatever, which I think was to leave it. And then a newspaper reporter did a Cora request,
Did a what request?
open records.
Okay.
Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. So I'm so ingrained. Anyway, it's like, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
open records. So they wanted to see the challenge form. And it was delivered with the person who challenged it, their name was redacted. And it led to the debate of, does that fall within Colorado patron privacy law, Colorado statute?
That's interesting.
It was interesting, and it's like 47 pages of the response, but basically the end result was yes, the patron name falls within Colorado state statute library law, and their name should be redacted. And it's interesting to think about. Like, they decided basically in the appeals court that they were, as far as the statute is worded, right, is protection of patron user records. And so it's sort of like, well, what does that mean? Or library use. And I think, there was one argument, it's like, well, that's not library use. And they have to provide their name to challenge it, otherwise we can't respond to them. But then if someone wants, in this case, an open records, and they want to write an article about it, then all of a sudden they become private. And it's interesting, it could be a whole meeting to discuss this, but I think,
So the newspaper challenged it in court?
yeah, because they didn't think the name should be redacted. And at first the library director thought so too, and then the library director came around and said, or no, maybe it was the other way. They said, yeah, it should be redacted. And then the director said, well, actually, maybe it shouldn't be redacted. So, which kind of complicated the case in court.
Right.
Because it's like, well, the library director doesn't know what they're deciding on, so that didn't help. It's just interesting. Here's what, that in and of itself, what kind of made me think about and maybe concerns me going forward is, would something like that lead to where if someone comes into my library and wants a request for reconsideration form, which clearly asks for all their personal information, is that going to lead to where then someone can do that anonymously because of patron privacy? That I have a problem with. I have a huge problem with, because then what does that mean? I mean, you could have your own staff challenging something. I don't want to go to extremes, but I mean, if it's anonymous, it's anonymous.
Are there other civic spaces where citizens can accuse something of something and not have to
Reveal
provide their name-
themselves.
reveal
Mhm.
themselves?
Mm.
You know,
You're right.
I mean, I'm just thinking like,
I think they can reveal themselves, but when the open records comes in, is that like, well, now is it considered private? Like, I
It
don't.
is interesting under the context of the
interesting.
Open Records Act.
Yeah.
And then library law can be pretty specific in terms of patron privacy.
that's.
I'll send you because one of the city attorneys who, I mean, there's a few of them, but the one who kind of represents or works with me in the library, he ran across it, and for obvious reasons he thought, you might be interested to see this.
It's not part of like a patron record or borrowing history or anything like that. But like if I
Exactly,
took issue
there's-
with a statue in a city park, and I wrote into or formally complained to the city that I think that statue should be taken down,
Right.
and there's a form, and somebody wants to see that form, would the same thing happen?
But there's not the same
No,
expectation of privacy.
because then, I mean,
as
at
in
least
the
as far as
library.
you're not in Colorado library statute.
Your privacy surrounds what you borrow or what you read or
That's the
access.
argument.
But I
That's
think
definitely the argument.
This is a really interesting one.
Like I said, I maybe should have brought this up earlier.
No,
When there is a request for Open Records Act, does that go through the city's attorney's office or would that come directly to you? Would you have to be the
If
decider?
it came
in
to
that
me, I would push it to the city clerk,
one? Okay,
who would probably consult with the city attorney. It would really be off my plate in that sense. I'm not the one to decide how those requests are provided and in what form. Now, if the clerk came to me and said somebody wanted an open record request for a challenge and we need you to send this to us,
oh, so the question is even.
I would give it to the clerk.
You would give it to the clerk.
They would decide whether it's redacted or not. I might have opinions about it, but I don't know if I can be the decider there. And now with this case,
Right.
I would probably be very forthcoming on what my thought is on that.
it's not something I would
They're not,
do that.
yeah, well, I agree. With whatever you're thinking.
Wait, let me move us along. Library board comments. All right, our next meeting, November 20th, and we will go ahead and adjourn at 8:44.
Wow.